In summer 2020, the hurt, the pain could no longer be ignored.
Black Lives Matter!
Living in a time of a pandemic, a lot of strife.
The racism is systemic. It is killing us.
No justice, no peace.
Things are better than they were, but they are not what they should be.
What comes next?
It's now up to us in the policing to be responsive and actually change.
To achieve justice and understanding.
I'm Yuki Washington.
And I'm Janelle Burrell.
Welcome to this special edition of Eyewitness News, Justice and Understanding. You know, at the heart of the demonstrations is the strained relationship between police departments and some of the communities they serve.
Yeah, I spoke with some officers who have been in the thick of the protest, and they say for that dynamic to change, police departments first need to look inward. The images will likely forever be seared in our nation's history. Here in Philadelphia, while most of the protests have been peaceful, the turbulent hours of unrest rocked the city to its core. What was it like for you as a Black police officer to be on the front lines and be getting it from both ends?
The very community that we opted to stay here and serve, that we grew up in, you're treated like as if you're nothing.
I sat down with this Philadelphia police officer, a Black woman who asked not to be identified out of concern for retaliation. She loves serving her city, but she's now considering quitting the department. She described for us some of her confrontations with protesters.
They'll say like you're not Black enough, or you're a slave catcher, you're a cotton picker. Literally, I had a couple of African Americans approach me. I had one spit at me. I had one
spit at you.
Yeah. George Floyd did not happen here in the city of Philadelphia, but look at the damage it caused, because people are tired.
One of the reasons for that exhaustion, long-standing tension between police and some of the communities they serve. The other cause, she says, a dire need for change in the culture of the Philadelphia Police Department.
It's systematically been a white professional job, plain and simple.
Willie Williams is a lieutenant in the Philadelphia Police Department and president of the Northeast region of the National Black Police Association. He's also son of Philadelphia's first Black police commissioner, the late Willie Williams, who later became the first African-American police chief of Los Angeles.
The implicit biases that is brought on to that the people bring onto the job, that needs to be broken down.
We need to change the way we police our communities and our Black and brown communities especially.
Lieutenant Williams and retired Philadelphia police detective David Fisher point to the statistics. While 44% of the city is Black, only 31% of the police department is Black.
We need to put more minority officers within the Philadelphia Police Department. And then when they actually are police officers, that they interact with white officers. We used to call it, back in the old days, it was a salt and pepper team.
Their hope is now in the department's new police commissioner, Danielle Outlaw, the first Black female leader to take the helm. In a statement, Commissioner Outlaw told us, as recent events have illustrated, if ever there was a time that a large-scale overhaul of dated, archaic, and less inclusive law enforcement paradigms was needed, now is that time. The commissioner says changes are already underway, including plans to hire a diversity and inclusion manager. She says they'll also be reevaluating their disciplinary process, and she intends to improve their recruitment to better reflect the neighborhoods they serve.
It is a long-term process to change this culture.
Attorney Ken Trujillo is a former federal prosecutor and Philadelphia city solicitor who served on the city's police corruption task force. He says identifying quality candidates is key.
It's a difficult place when you come in as a rookie police officer back to a culture that's existed for decades. They're also then, from an employment standpoint, protected by an arbitration system that makes it very difficult to discipline bad police officers. The vast majority of police officers are wanting to do and are good people. They're good people trying to do a very difficult job.
A challenging job, but one with the ability to make a lasting impact. Why walk away from this when you could potentially make a difference?
Strong people get tired too.
They've reached their breaking point. It's now up to us in the policing to be responsive and actually change.
The veteran officers we spoke with say they hope to support and reassure those younger officers who have really become discouraged over the last few months. All of the members of the department who I spoke with say they are hopeful that the momentum now being felt across the country will be the catalyst needed to effect real change.
Students and alumni of the prestigious Masterman School in Spring Garden have banded together to support each other and end racism at the institution. Natasha Brown shows you how they are fighting for change.
The names linked to the social media posts may be blurred, but the accounts of racism and racist incidents are very clear, all from students at one of the most prestigious schools in Philadelphia, Masterman School in Spring Garden.
There was a lot of submissions about just the casual use of the N-word and the
Yes.
and students having to really lobby to administration how that's unacceptable.
You would have teachers very obviously targeting Black students.
The submissions on the public Instagram account dubbed Black at Masterman have gone viral, and since it came to light a few weeks ago, students past and present are calling for change. Dr. Janaea Akbar is a 1997 graduate of Masterman, and she, along with recent graduate Madison Tyler, helped to form an alliance to tackle the problem.
We sort of just formed a little coalition between Black at Masterman group, the 2020, and then the older alums, just to sort of get a pulse on what was happening at the school and also see how we can offer our support.
The group has met with school officials and recently held a rally at Masterman, making their voices heard.
We had people speaking about times that they were there back in the 80s, next to people like myself who were speaking about things that happened just this year in 2020.
The coalition of alumni have also drafted a charter detailing changes they want to see happen, like more diversity in the admissions process and in the teaching staff, and more accountability.
We do feel like there should be some sort of procedures for teachers who have 20, 30, 40 complaints, especially in regards to racism.
In a public letter, school leaders say they are committed to improving race and equity issues at Masterman, acknowledging the work that current and alumni students have been doing to lead the way.
We have the power as alumni to speak and say what it is that we want without fear of being punished in some way. And if we can be there for those students that are still going to be there for however many years, we really want to be there.
Young people across our region recognize that they are living through history, and many of them have stepped up to use their voices to fight against police brutality and say Black lives matter. Eyewitness News reporter Alicia Reed has one story from Montgomery County.
No justice! No peace!
Marching across town.
Black lives matter!
Eaton Memorial Park to Miller Meadow.
There was pushback from members of the community who didn't support the movement.
A rally organized by 2 high school students pushing to raise awareness about racial injustice in their Hatboro community.
What made me realize that I need to get even more involved with allyship was seeing how hateful my community was, seeing the terrible things they are putting on Facebook.
Martina Kernosh says she's seen it play out time and time again. So with the backing of Put People First PA, the community came out to hold law enforcement, government officials, and neighbors to a high standard of justice and equality.
Our community isn't immune to this, and it never has been.
No justice, no peace!
For her, that means supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, calling attention to police brutality and institutional racism.
That's always meant that I'm gonna hold a viewpoint that's supportive of those communities, but more so, I'm gonna do things that actively make life better for them.
The teen says she's planning future protests in surrounding communities throughout the summer.
Reminding people that it's a movement, not a moment. We gotta keep fighting.
A South Jersey artist doesn't want anyone to forget the names of people like George Floyd. Trang Do shows you the unusual materials he uses to honor their lives.
3,400 Skittles, countless man-hours sorting, painting, and hot gluing them to a 30 by 40 canvas. The result? A striking portrait of Trayvon Martin. The 17-year-old's killing made national headlines in 2012 after he was gunned down by a man who told a 911 dispatcher the teen looked suspicious. Officers found no weapons on Martin, just a bag of Skittles in his pocket. Courtney Newman is the artist behind the portrait. Newman enjoys the added challenge of working with unusual materials. Bullet casings shaped the faces of these portraits of civil rights icons Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Newman's mother, Crystal, says her son, who has epilepsy, is a man of few words. He's currently working on a piece featuring George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor.
Coming up, Voices of Faith talk about the struggle for justice and understanding.
Every generation has a responsibility of making it better.
And we need to pay a particular attention to what has gone on in this country.
Also, my conversation with the late Congressman John Lewis. Find out what he told me about young people today.
And then later, memorializing this moment in black and gold. A Philadelphia pastor is helping to feed and heal members of his community, and he's using the lessons learned decades ago as a child from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. CBS3 photojournalist Brad Now has the sights and sounds of his story.
This is the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, the east location. This is the oldest African-American Baptist church in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. All the way, all the way. And we're here to serve the people. All the way up. Pastor Alan Waller. I'm the senior pastor of the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church.
So we want to do 3 stacks for the furthest car, midway, and all the way up front. That's how we want to position our load. We good?
The reality is, I think all of us have to admit we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. I got you. There you go. Okay, pull it. People are used to seeing me in my picture sitting on Martin Luther King's lap in 1967. And that reminds me of the work that my father and he were doing at the time. And it also compels me to do the work. So things are better than they were, but they are not what they should be.
Hey, where you going, brother?
All the way up, all the way up. Because of the pandemic, people are in need. Some people don't have jobs, some people are not getting checks, therefore we're feeding every day. Good morning. All right. And I understand where we are right now is a time of challenging this country to live up to what it says it is on paper. All right. Thank you. You're welcome. With one hand, I have to challenge the system to be right. And with the other hand, I have to encourage people to know that there is still meaningful life even within a crooked system. So I still feel like getting up tomorrow and still feel like fighting the good fight. Hey, how you doing? All right.
Philadelphia Archbishop Nelson Perez is calling for people to talk to each other about race relations. He's the first Latino to serve in the position. Despite the challenges, the Archbishop told our Joe Holden he has hope and faith in the future.
I believe that a dead man rose back to life, so yes, I do believe that there is hope.
For Philadelphia's recently minted Archbishop, his faith, he says, confirms there will always be hope. The many communities of our area have tangled with difficult conversations on racial inequality. And Archbishop Nelson Perez says listening is paramount for understanding and change.
As a faith leader, what needs to happen here?
People need to talk to each other, right? And recognize the fact that while in terms of combating the sin of racism, the evil of racism, we've had success and progress, we're not done yet.
No justice, no peace.
Listen to the hurt
No justice, no
that racism causes to people.
Black Lives Matter.
So we begin to talk again and not act as if it's not there.
Perez is the first Hispanic American bishop of the Archdiocese. his short time back home, he's seen a global pandemic, government-imposed shutdowns, economic meltdowns, protests, and civil unrest.
What do you make of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Obviously, the African-American black community feels deeply hurt, that sometimes they feel, right, that their lives don't matter. And frankly, at times, it certainly appears that way. So I think they have an incredible point that their lives matter, and we need to pay a particular attention to what has gone on in this country in the last several years.
I can't breathe.
Perez earlier this month met with members of the black clergy. He described it a very honest and frank discussion on the issue of race relations and a need for healing. He says that starts with leadership, including the mayor, elected and appointed officials, and even the police commissioner.
As a leader of faith, what is your advice to them?
To continue to do the right thing, right? I think the mayor and the commissioner, in extraordinary circumstances, confronted these past couple, the pandemic, the civil unrest, did the very best that they could do. They were out there present. We saw them. Anybody in leadership is going to get criticized for one thing or another. That's part of being a leader. But I have to say they were very present to the city of Philadelphia.
At this moment in time, Archbishop Nelson Perez's overarching message is to be sensitive to the plight of the people.
There's more to come in our special look at justice and understanding. Later, the Philadelphia artist memorializing this moment in history.
And my conversation with the man who is no stranger to struggle in the streets, the late civil rights giant, John Lewis. And welcome back to this special Eyewitness News program, Justice and Understanding. In 2016, I had the chance to sit down with Congressman John Lewis. It was a good reminder that we have been here before and still have far to go.
We must build on the past.
Congressman, civil rights leader, Liberty Medal recipient. I had the distinct honor of having a conversation with this incredible man in 2016. 4 years later, after battling late-stage pancreatic cancer, we're celebrating his life. Civil rights icon. 17-term congressman. Even at the age of 76, he was still at the forefront, leading the charge against racial injustice and police brutality. He offered these thoughts on the visual message of athletes, then and now.
I not only approve what they're doing, but I think they're doing what is good, what is necessary. Their protest is protected by the Constitution, by the First Amendment. Some people may not like what they're doing, but they're standing up by kneeling, by speaking up, by speaking out.
Which he always did. At the age of 23, Lewis was the youngest speaker at the 1963 March on Washington, where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech. Lewis made it his dream, his life mission, to speak out on racial inequality. The Selma to Montgomery, Alabama marches in '65 were organized by Lewis and other prominent nonviolent activists to demonstrate the desire of Black Americans to exercise a constitutional right to vote. On this day, getting as far as the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, stopped by Alabama state troopers. 2 weeks after that attack, which is known as Bloody Sunday, Lewis and hundreds more, including the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., completed the march. July 2020, the body of the late congressman is escorted by Alabama state troopers to cross that bridge one last time. Known as the conscience of the Congress, a genuine American hero, Representative Lewis encouraged our youth to get into good trouble, telling me, the younger generation especially, has to lead the way.
They will lead us to a better place. They will lead us to higher ground.
Coming up next, see what's growing in Strawberry Mansion.
Seeing them so excited, so energized, so loved.
We'll explain why these colors were chosen for this community.
Welcome back to our Eyewitness News special, Justice and Understanding.
As protests continued around the country, something was flowering in Strawberry Mansion. Some Philadelphia area artists capturing the spirit of the moment in paint. Isaac Scott and Gerald A. Brown are artists adding some gold to Strawberry Mansion.
The street paintings go up all over the country. We wanted to do something that's in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement.
Living in a time of a pandemic, living in a time of a lot of strife, I think this is our way of being able to tell and archive our story during this time.
Stay golden.
We need to have two-word phrase, and golden just kind of felt right.
Spoke to the spirit of the moment and the spirit of our people.
And we always kind of seen gold with Black and brown communities reflecting this resilient, pure soul energy.
The fist is actually from a photo that I took on the first day of the protests.
There's metallic gold used for the fist, and so that reflects the nature of gold, but also like the warm kind of skin complexion of Black and brown people. Mr. Floyd!
The Mural Arts program is partnering on the project, a love letter to the community.
This is a time that's been really difficult, but people are stepping up to the plate and people are resilient.
And seeing them so excited, so energized, so loved. I think that's really the biggest thing, is feeling loved when looking at this mural and knowing that there's people out there that are beside you who care for you and who are fighting to have better conditions for you.
Thank you for watching this Eyewitness News special, Justice and Understanding. I'm Janelle Burrell.
And I'm Yuki Washington. This program ends, but the story does not. And we at Eyewitness News are committed to bringing it to you.